Hey guys, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to Maiden Day for the Boomerang Ranger. Assuming everything goes well on our checks and balances and range checks and stuff like that, we're going to be mating this plane today. It's a beautiful morning here. We're supposed to get some rain this afternoon, but anyways, first thing we're going to do is pull this thing out, get it put together, and my goal is to talk through the entire Maiden and kind of show you guys the process. I've done that a little bit on some previous flights, but anyways, hang tight and we'll get this thing out of the trailer and put it together. All right guys, so we've done all the checks. All of our surfaces are moving the correct direction. What we're going to do now is we are going to fire up the engine, do another engine check, and then we're going to do our range check, which basically you always want to do with the engine running because that would cause the most interference. So we'll fire up the engine, do a couple engine checks, just put her out there in the field and walk 30 paces away and rotate the aircraft in all 4 directions. All trimmed out now. But we've got flight mode set up, so what's happening is with flaps up, it's on its own trim setting, and then we'll have to trim out each flap setting. Now we'll do our 45 inverted to check nose weight. Feels good. And right now we're cruising around at about half stick. Can you tell me what my timer says, Stacy? Sure can. Two minutes, 54 seconds. Counting down. Yeah. Okay, so still flying around on mid rates. It feels pretty comfortable. So now what we'll do is we're going to drop the gear. Okay, gear switches down. 3 gear. So now we're going to put flaps on and we're going to get it trimmed out for flaps. So now it's on half flaps or takeoff flaps. And now we're going to go to full flaps. and feels good. Very little change. So now we do an approach and see how it looks.
Good plate. Good plate.
So everything was good with the plane. We ended up flying it on mid rates. Low rates is where I took off. It's okay. Probably for flying is okay, but it's really docile on the low rates. On high rates, it's way too active. So the reason I set up those rates is I don't usually fly with rates, but it's nice to have those options when you're doing a maiden on a plane that has a crappy manual. So beautiful little plane. The 120 at our elevation is, I would say, is perfect. You know, if you're flying at sea level, it's going to be pretty ballistic, but it's a great pairing on this engine. I'm sure it would fly great with a 90, 80 size engine as well, but you'd be a lot more on the throttle. So when I was flying that, I was generally about half stick most of the way, most of that flight. When I did, not sure if we got it on camera, I think we did, when I did the one loop, that's the only time I went to full throttle on that entire flight. So, I mean, first flights, you're just getting things dialed in. Unfortunately, we had camera issues, so probably fly this 2 more flights now, get her dialed in, and we'll show you guys the takeoff and landings from those flights, any highlights, and then we'll talk about the adjustments and everything at the end of the video. Okay guys, so what the changes we've made before flight number 2 is we had the flight modes set to common individual trims. So on full flaps, we'd have our own trim. On all the different flap settings, we'd have individual trims. Problem is that also affects the throttle trim on the radio. I don't know if you can separate that, but what I've done is I've taken that individual trims on the flight modes, and we've gone into the flat menu and programmed those in individually. So now all of our trims are common, and when we go to takeoff flaps and landing flaps, those have their own preset elevator compensation, but it's not affecting our throttle. Don't want to leave it as your throttle because it could cause big issues. If you have the engine shut off on full flaps and you don't notice that, when you're coming around for another flight and you go to full flaps, your throttle trim is set down and now your plane turns off at the wrong time. So anyways, getting ready for flight number 2. Okay, taking off. Okay, full aileron check. Nice. Rolls pretty axial too. She's trimmed out nice. She's quiet too.
Yeah, really quiet.
Very quiet. Quite a difference from like your Boomerang, right? Yeah. Where it's the turbine's so exposed. Nice sky candy lights.
Yeah, beautiful.
There you go, award just for you. Let me know when he's off the runway.
Yeah, I will. He's off.
So the reason we're going to flaps again is we're just confirming that our setup is good. So we got 3 gear down, we're on takeoff flaps, and that feels good. Full flaps, and that feels good. So when I have my full flap set up, I actually like the nose to be pushed down a little bit, and I like to fight the nose just slightly. So I have a little bit of backstick. There we go. So that flight, basically, flight number 2, during the build series, I talked about only setting the flaps to where the manual suggested, which I think was 72 millimeters. So I'm actually going to increase the flap a little bit. It floats quite a bit on landing, and I want it to have more landing authority, more slowdown, more flap authority. So that's the next change I'm going to make, is we're going to increase the flap travel just a little bit and see how that affects the plane.